John is setting up the infrastructure for a web application that requires multiple EC2 instances to handle the expected demand. However, when testing the application, he discovers all the traffic is routed to only one of the servers. Which AWS feature should he add to his application in order to evenly distribute traffic among all servers? Your options are auto scaling, Elastic Load Balancer, Route 53, Amazon CloudFront. So the key to answer this question is you need to look for keywords in the question. So the keyword here is John is looking for a solution which gives him the ability to distribute the traffic evenly on all the servers. Whenever you have a keyword to evenly distribute traffic, you need to look for options where there is a mention of load balancer. So the right answer is option B, Elastic Load Balancer. Elastic load balancing automatically distributes incoming application traffic evenly between all the servers that are associated with it. It can distribute traffic in one or more availability zones. Next question. How can a company configure automatic asynchronous copying of objects in Amazon S3 bucket across regions? Your options are using cross-region replication, by configuring multi-master replication, using lifecycle actions. This is done by default by AWS. So the right answer is option A, using cross-region replication. Cross-region replication enables automatic asynchronous copying of objects across Amazon S3 buckets. You can replicate objects to a single destination bucket or to multiple destination buckets. The destination buckets can be in different AWS regions or within the same region as the source bucket. You can refer to the link on my screen to understand cross-region replication in more detail. Next question. How can a database administrator reduce the operational overhead for a MySQL database? Your options are migrate the database onto an Amazon EC2 instance, use AWS CloudFormation to manage operations, migrate the database onto AWS Lambda, migrate the database onto Amazon RDS instance. Whenever there is a mention in the question to reduce the operational overhead, you need to look at any option which gives you a capability or a service which is a managed service. So in this case, the right answer is option D, migrate the database onto Amazon RDS instance. Amazon RDS is a managed relational database service that supports multiple database engines, including MySQL, MariaDB, PostgreSQL, Oracle, and Microsoft SQL Server. You reduce operational overhead when you start consuming a managed service. Question number 104. Which feature of AWS allows you to deploy a new application for which the requirements may change over time? Your options are operational excellence, high availability, fault tolerance, elasticity. So the right answer is option D, elasticity. Elasticity is the ability to acquire resources as you need them and release resources when you no longer need them. It allows you to deploy your application without worrying about whether it will need more resources in future or not. Moving on to next question. Which AWS service can be used for building and integrating loosely coupled distributed applications? Your options are A, Amazon EBS, B, Amazon SNS, C, Amazon EFS, D, Amazon RDS. Let's understand what loosely coupled application is. Loosely coupled application means breaking an application into multiple independent services. Whenever there is issue in one service, it doesn't impact the other service. So in this case, the right answer is option B, Amazon SNS. Amazon SNS, which is also called a simple notification service, is a web service that makes it easy to set up, operate, and send notifications. It can be used in combination with Amazon SQS, which is simple queue service, to decouple and scale microservices, distributed systems, and serverless applications and improve reliability. So even though in the options you just have Amazon SNS individually is not capable of breaking up the application. It always works in coordination with Amazon SQS when you are trying to decouple an application. Moving on to question 106. Which AWS service allows you to use block-based volumes on premise that are then asynchronously backed up to Amazon S3? Your options are AWS Storage Gateway Volume Gateway, AWS Storage Gateway File Gateway, Amazon S3 Transfer Acceleration, Amazon S3 Multi-Part Upload. So the right answer is option A, AWS Storage Gateway Volume Gateway. You can store your primary data locally while asynchronously backing up that data to AWS. Stored volumes provide your on-premise applications with low latency access to their entire dataset. At the same time, they provide durable offsite backups. You can create storage volumes and mount them as iSCSI devices from your on-premise application servers. Data returned to your stored volumes is stored on your on-premise storage hardware. This data is asynchronously backed up to Amazon S3 as Amazon EBS snapshots, which is Elastic Block Store. If they were talking about file-based storage, then the answer would have been option B, AWS Storage Gateway, File Gateway. So there can be two variations of this question. Moving on to next question. Your management is looking to deploy a shared file access on AWS. Hundreds of EC2 instances will access the file system simultaneously and will need petabytes of data storage. Which AWS service is best option in this case? Your options are Amazon EC2, Amazon EBS, Amazon EFS, Amazon S3. So the right answer is option C, Amazon EFS. EFS file systems can automatically scale from gigabytes to petabytes of data without needing to provision storage. Tens, hundreds, or even thousands of compute instances can access an Amazon EFS file system at the same time. And Amazon EFS provides consistent performance to each compute instance. Amazon EFS is designed to be highly durable and highly available. With Amazon EFS, there is no minimum fees or setup costs, and you pay only for what you use. Moving on to next question. Choose the best Amazon Route 53 routing policy that can route traffic to multiple resources based on the end user's location. Your options are A, failover routing policy, B, simple routing policy, C, latency routing policy, D, geolocation routing policy. So the right answer is option D, geolocation routing policy. Geolocation routing lets you choose the resources that serve your traffic based on the geographic location of your users, meaning the location that DNS queries originate from. For example, you might want all queries from Europe to be routed to an ELB load balancers in the Frankfurt region. You can refer to the link on my screen to understand more about geolocation routing policy. You can expect to get at least a question in the exam, which might be revolving around the routing policies of Amazon Route 53. So I would recommend you to go through all the routing policies. Moving on to question 109. Which of the following AWS services can an organization use to automate operational tasks on EC2 instances using existing chef cookbooks? Your options are AWS Config, AWS Service Catalog, AWS OpsWorks, AWS Code Deploy. So the right answer is C, AWS OpsWorks. AWS OpsWorks is a configuration management service that provides managed instances of Chef and Puppet. OpsWorks lets you use Chef and Puppet to automate how servers are configured, deployed, and managed across your Amazon EC2 instances or on-premise compute environments. OpsWorks has three offerings: AWS OpsWorks for Chef Automate, AWS OpsWorks for Puppet Enterprise, and AWS OpsWorks Stacks. Moving on to question 110. Which AWS service can be used to automate the provisioning of infrastructure and administrative tasks for an analytical data warehouse? Your options are A. Amazon Redshift, B. Amazon SageMaker, C. Amazon OpenSearch, D. Amazon QuickSight. Whenever there is a mention of data warehouse, you need to look at Amazon Redshift in the options. If it is there, most likely that's going to be your answer. So the right answer in this case is option A, Amazon Redshift. Amazon Redshift is a fully managed petabyte scale data warehouse service in the cloud. You can start with just a few hundred gigabytes of data and scale to petabytes or more. This enables you to use your data to acquire new insights for your business and customers. It uses SQL to analyze structured and semi-structured data. Moving on to the next question. Which of the following features can be used to preview the changes to be made to an AWS resource when using the AWS CloudFormation template? Your options are AWS CloudFormation stack sets, AWS CloudFormation change sets, AWS CloudFormation drift detection, AWS CloudFormation intrinsic functions. So the right answer is option B, AWS CloudFormation change sets. Change sets allow you to preview how proposed changes to a stack might impact your running resources. For example, whether your changes will delete or replace any critical resource. AWS CloudFormation makes the changes to your stack only when you decide to execute the change set, allowing you to decide whether to proceed with your proposed changes or explore other changes by creating another change set. Next question. A weather tracking website monitors the weather along the flight route. This information is used by travelers around the world to plan their trip. Travelers are expecting quick turnaround time when booking flights and viewing the weather. This website is using Amazon Route 53 DNS, which is the best routing policy for the website. Your options are failover routing policy, geolocation routing policy, latency-based routing policy, weighted routing policy. So the right answer is latency-based routing policy. Again, there is a link on my screen to read more about latency-based routing policy. I would recommend you to go through it and read more about it. Moving on to next question. What can be termed as a user-defined label that has a key value pair of variable character length, which is assigned to AWS resources as metadata for administration and management purposes? Your options are option A, tag key, option B, resource flag, option C, resource tag, option D, resource group. So the correct answer is option C, resource tag. You can assign metadata to your AWS resources in the form of tags. Each tag is a label consisting of a user-defined key and value. Tags can help you manage, identify, organize, search for, and filter resources. You can create tags to categorize resources by purpose, owner, environment, or any other criteria which you would want to use. Next question. Which of the following services can be used to investigate and analyze the root cause of potential security threat to AWS resources? Your options are AWS Shield, Amazon Detective, Amazon Guard Duty, AWS Security Hub. So the right answer is Amazon Detective. Amazon Detective can be used to analyze and visualize security data to investigate potential security issues. It collects and analyzes data from multiple sources like AWS CloudTrail logs, VPC flow logs, and Amazon Guard Duty findings. Based upon unified findings created by Amazon Detective, the security team can quickly determine the root cause of security threat. Moving on to question 115. Which of the following is a secure, isolated networking component that can be used to host EC2 resources in the AWS cloud? Your options are AWS VPC, AWS EKS, AWS NACL, AWS ECS. So the correct answer is option A, AWS VPC. Amazon VPC or Virtual Private Cloud enables you to launch AWS resources into a virtual network that you have defined. This virtual network closely resembles a traditional network that you would operate in your own data center, with the benefits of using the scalable infrastructure of AWS. Next question. Your web application is deployed in the Ohio region. The website is now planned to be distributed to other regions, and you plan to use CloudFront for global distribution. What statements about CloudFront are false? You need to choose two options. Just make sure that you read it correctly. You need to choose the statements that are false. So your options are CloudFront can help improve performance by using keep alive connections between edge locations and origin server. Option B, CloudFront uses the concept of edge locations for caching and delivering content faster for its users. Option C, CloudFront doesn't cache dynamic content. Option D, CloudFront can use only S3 buckets as their origin server from which they cache content. So the correct answers are option C and option D. You can use several different kinds of origin with CloudFront. For example, you can use an Amazon S3 bucket, a media store container, a media package channel, an application load balancer, or even an AWS Lambda function URL. CloudFront can serve dynamic content as well. You can refer to the link on my screen to understand more around serving of dynamic content by CloudFront. Moving on to question number 117. A number of large objects from different geographical locations need to be uploaded to an S3 bucket. Which is the fastest and most reliable way to accomplish this? Your options are option A, you can directly access the S3 bucket from the different locations and use a multi-part upload for transferring huge objects. Option B, you can use S3 transfer acceleration from each geographic location for transferring data quickly. Option C, you can use a direct connect link from each of the geographic locations for transferring data quickly. Option D, you can connect to an application running on AWS EC2 that is hosted in multiple regions using Route 53 and use latency-based routing to upload files to S3 bucket. So the right answer is option B. You can use S3 transfer acceleration from each geographic location for transferring data quickly. The best way to address this scenario is to route the requests to the nearest CloudFront edge locations from the different geographic locations. Edge locations provide a fast network infrastructure, bypassing much of internet for delivering content to S3 destinations. Performance gains of nearly 50 to 500% can be observed while using S3 transfer acceleration. Moving on to next question. Which two functions can be performed using Amazon Route 53? You need to choose two right answers. Your options are connect user requests to AWS infrastructure, create and manage cryptographic keys, transfer DNS records for domain names from other registrars, connect an on-premise data center directly to AWS via fiber optic cables. So the right answers are option A and option C. Amazon Route 53 connects user requests to AWS infrastructure. It also provides DNS services, including transferring DNS records to any existing domain names that may be with other registrars. You can also register new domain names using Route 53. It also provides a reliable method of connecting users to infrastructure, which may be inside or outside of AWS, including allowing end users to access web applications hosted using AWS. Moving on to next question. You have deployed your application on multiple Amazon EC2 instances. Your customer complain that sometimes they can't reach the application. Which AWS service allows you to monitor the performance of your EC2 instances to assist in troubleshooting these issues? Your options are A. AWS CloudTrail, B. AWS Config, C. Amazon CloudWatch, D. AWS Lambda. So the right answer is option C, Amazon CloudWatch. It collects and visualizes real-time logs, metrics, and event data in automated dashboards to streamline your infrastructure and application maintenance. Amazon CloudWatch is a monitoring and management service that provides data and actionable insights for AWS, hybrid, and on-premise applications and infrastructure resources. Moving on to question 120. A company is deploying a new two-tier web application in AWS. Where should the most frequently accessed data be stored so that the application's response time is optimal? Your options are A. AWS Storage Gateway, B. Amazon EBS Volume, C. AWS OpsWorks, D. Amazon Elastic Cache. So the correct answer is option D, Amazon Elastic Cache. Amazon Elastic Cache is a fully managed in-memory caching service supporting flexible real-time use cases. You can use Elastic Cache for caching, which accelerates application and database performance, or as a primary data store for use cases that don't require durability, like session stores, gaming leaderboards, streaming, and analytics. Company wants to set up a domain name system DNS record for its application with a failover routing policy that is based on health checks. Which AWS service or resource should the company use to achieve this goal? Your options are Amazon Kendra, Application Load Balancer, Amazon Route 53, AWS WAF. Whenever you see any question related to DNS, then you need to look for Route 53 service. Another way to remember this is that DNS server responds to queries on port 53, and that's where AWS service for DNS gets its name from. Now you can have different type of routing policies in case of DNS, but for the scope of this question, they intend to use failover routing policy. You can refer to the link on my screen to read more about routing policies in Amazon Route 53. A business wants to provide a user access to an Amazon S3 bucket. Which element of S3 bucket policy contains information about the users who need access to the bucket? Your options are principal, action, resource, effect. Principal is the element that holds the information about the user, account, or service that is the recipient of the permission. Now, action holds the information about the set of operations which will be allowed or denied using the effect element. Resource is the S3 bucket object access point for which you apply the permission. A company plans to migrate its custom marketing and order processing application to AWS. The company needs to deploy the application on different type of instances with various configurations of CPU, memory, and networking capacity. Which AWS service should the company use to meet these requirements? Your options are Amazon Athena, Amazon EC2, AWS Lambda, Amazon Cognito. Keyword to answer this question is they are looking for an option which provides them flexibility to choose different type of configuration in terms of CPU, RAM, and networking. So the correct answer is option B, Amazon EC2. You can browse to the link which is on my screen to read more about different type of Amazon EC2 instances. You can expect to get some questions around different type of Amazon EC2 instances in your exam. Moving on to next question. Which service provides a virtually unlimited amount of online highly durable object storage? Your options are Amazon S3, Amazon Redshift, Amazon Elastic Container Service, Amazon Elastic File System. Now, option B and C are automatically eliminated in this case as they are looking for storage solution. Redshift is a data warehousing solution and ECS is a container orchestration solution, which leaves us with option A and option D. Since they are looking for object-based storage, so the correct answer is option A, Amazon S3. EFS, as the name indicates, is a file-based storage solution. If you are looking to learn more about Amazon S3, then I already have a detailed video around this on my channel. Check it out as it covers aspects from both Cloud Practitioner and Solution Architect exams. Let's now look at another variation of this question. Which AWS service provides a simple and scalable shared file storage solution for use with Linux-based AWS and on-premise servers? Your options are Amazon S3, Amazon Glacier, Amazon EBS, Amazon EFS. You should already know the correct answer based on the previous explanation, so I'll directly head to the solution. The right answer is option D, Amazon EFS. For your future reference, EBS is block storage and Glacier is one of the classes of S3 storage, which is again an object-based storage. Question number 126. Which of the following components of AWS infrastructure consists of one or more discrete data centers interconnected through low latency links? Your options are edge location, availability zone, region, AWS private link. You do get such questions in AWS Cloud Practitioner exam where the question is just a definition of a feature. And in this case, the question in itself is the definition of availability zone. So the correct answer is option B, availability zone. As you can read the definition on my screen, availability zone is one or more discrete data centers with redundant power, networking, and connectivity in an AWS region. All AZs in an AWS region are interconnected with high bandwidth, low latency networking. Moving on to question number 127. What approach of transcoding a large number of individual video files adheres to AWS architecture principles? Your options are using many instances in parallel, using dedicated hardware, using a single large instance during off-peak hours, using a large GPU instance type. Now, option A, which is using many instances in parallel, seems to be a good candidate as parallel processing will lead to faster execution. Next option, to use dedicated hardware, will help, however, will also result in increase in cost. So not something recommended. Option C is again some kind of dedicated hardware during off-peak hours, so not a right option. Using a large GPU instance will help, however, not as much as compared to option A. So the correct answer is option A. Now, as a thumb rule, multi-threading is always better than serial processing. You are tasked with finding a low-cost, long-term solution for data backups. Which AWS service would you choose as a solution? Your options are Amazon EBS, Amazon RDS, Amazon S3 Glacier, AWS Snowball. Whenever there is a talk about data backup and archiving solution in AWS, then you should look for S3 Glacier in the options. So the right answer is option C, Amazon S3 Glacier. It is a secure and durable service for low cost data archiving and long term backup. Question number 129. Which of the following is AWS sole responsibility when talking about AWS shared responsibility model? Your options are managing IAM policies, physical data center security, Amazon S3 bucket policies, auditing AWS CloudTrail logs. Now, since the customers don't have visibility or access to physical data centers, so its management is AWS responsibility. Other three options mentioned in this question are customer responsibility. Whenever you get such questions, then think of the quote, AWS is responsible for security of the cloud and customer is responsible for security in the cloud. As soon as you think about this quote, your options will be crystal clear and you will instantly know what the correct option is in the question. Question number 130. Which of the following disaster recovery scenarios offers the lowest possibility of downtime? Your options are backup and restore, warm standby, pilot light, multi-site active active. When it comes to lowest downtime or zero downtime, then the correct answer is multi-site active active disaster recovery. However, this option is the most costly to implement. You can refer to the diagram on my screen to understand different types of disaster recovery strategies. You can expect to get some questions around this in exam, so I would highly recommend you to refer to the link on my screen and understand this in more detail. Question number 131. Which methods can be used to identify AWS costs by departments? You need to choose two options. Your options are create separate accounts for each department, use reserved instances where possible, enable multi-factor authentication for root user, use tags to associate each instance with a particular department, pay bills using purchase orders. The correct answers are option A and option D. You should create separate accounts for each department and use tags to associate each instance with a particular department. This is also called as cost allocation tags. Now, option B, which is to use reserved instances, will help you in cost reduction, but not identify resources by cost. So it is incorrect. And option C talks about multi-factor authentication, which is a security feature and doesn't help you in identifying resources by cost. Option C is again a distractor here, which leaves us with option A and option D. Next question. Which of the following is AWS responsibility in the AWS shared responsibility model? Your options are updating the security group rules to block traffic to vulnerable ports, updating the network ACLs to block traffic to vulnerable ports, updating the firmware of the underlying EC2 hosts, patching operating system running on Amazon EC2 instances. Now, remember the code that I was mentioning in one of the previous questions. AWS is responsible for security of the cloud and customers are responsible for security in the cloud. Going by that statement, you should understand that the correct answer is updating the firmware of the underlying EC2 host. Now, why it is the responsibility of AWS? Because customers don't have access to underlying host in the AWS infrastructure. So it becomes AWS's responsibility to keep the host firmware up to date. And when it comes to option A, B, and D, customer has full control over these things, so it's their responsibility to manage them. Question number 133. What tasks should a customer perform when they suspect an AWS account has been compromised? You need to choose two options. Your options are remove MFA tokens, rotate passwords and access keys, move resources to a different AWS region, delete AWS CloudTrail logs, contact AWS support. Correct answers in this case are option B and option E. You should rotate passwords and access keys, and you should contact AWS support as well. In fact, you should immediately change the password and update the access keys that you might have generated in past as soon as you become aware that your account has been compromised. And then you should contact AWS support and take actions as per their guidance. How do Amazon EC2 autoscaling help achieve high availability for a web application? Now, option A, they enable the application's static content to reside closer to end users. No, this is a feature of CloudFront. So, incorrect options. Now, option B, they automatically add more instances across multiple AWS regions based on global demand on the application. This option definitely provides high availability. However, EC2 autoscaling doesn't add instances to multiple regions. So again, an incorrect option. Option C, they are able to distribute incoming requests across a tier of web server instances. It is a feature of load balancer. So again, incorrect. This now leaves us with option D, which is the correct answer. They automatically add or replace instances across multiple availability zone when the application needs it. Moving on to question number 135. A user is able to set up a master pair account to view consolidated billing using which of the following AWS service? Your options are AWS budgets, Amazon Macy, AWS organizations, Amazon QuickSight. The correct answer in this case is AWS organizations because it provides you with the capability to centrally manage and govern your cloud environment. AWS budgets is the simplest way to monitor your AWS spend and be alerted when you exceed or are forecasted to exceed your desired spending limit, which is not what is asked in this question. Now, Amazon Macy is a data security service that uses machine learning and pattern matching to discover and help protect your sensitive data. And the last option, option D, Amazon QuickSight is a cloud-powered business analytics service that makes it easy for all the employees within an organization to build visualizations. Which of the following AWS service or feature allows user to connect with and deploy AWS services programmatically? Your options are AWS Cloud9, AWS Management Console, AWS Code Pipeline, AWS Software Development Kits, SDKs. Let's apply the elimination approach here. First option is AWS Cloud9, which is a cloud-based integrated development environment that you use to write, run, and deploy code. So an incorrect choice. Now the option B, AWS Management Console, is obviously incorrect as it is the graphical user interface to access AWS Console. Then the third option we have is AWS Code Pipeline, which is AWS Continuous Delivery Service, making it an incorrect choice, leaving us with AWS SDK, which is the correct answer. Now with SDK, you can easily develop applications on AWS in the programming language of your choice, which includes C++, Java, Python, Ruby, Node.js, and many more. Let's look at next question of the series. A company wants to migrate a critical application to AWS. The application has a short runtime. The application is invoked by changes in data or by shifts in system state. The company needs a compute solution that maximizes operational efficiency and minimizes the cost of running the application. Which AWS solution should the company use to meet these requirements? Your options are AWS Lambda, Amazon EC2 reserved instances, EC2 spot instances, EC2 on-demand instances. This is one of the questions where there are lots of clues in it pointing to the definition of a feature. The first clue here is short runtime. Then there is a mention of using triggers to invoke it. And most importantly, the question talks about maximizing the operational efficiency and minimizing the cost of running application, which points us to look for something which is serverless, as we are talking about operational efficiency and minimizing the cost of running application. And in the list of options, we only have one option, which is serverless, that is AWS Lambda. And you would already know that AWS Lambda is serverless, which has a short runtime and can be invoked using different type of triggers. Question number 138 of the series. A company plans to create a data lake that uses Amazon S3. Which factor will have the most effect on cost? Your options are charges to transfer existing data into Amazon S3, the selection of S3 storage tiers, S3 ingest fees for each request, the addition of S3 bucket policies. Now you need to choose the option which will have most effect on cost. There can be multiple options which have effect on cost, but you need to choose the one which has the most effect. The storage class used in S3 can definitely have impact on the cost of the data lake. Different storage classes have different pricing tiers. For example, using the Glacier storage class for infrequently accessed data can be much cheaper than using the standard storage class for frequently accessed data. So the correct answer is option B, the selection of S3 storage tiers. How does the AWS cloud pricing model differ from the traditional on-premise storage pricing model? Your options are there are no upfront cost commitments, there are no infrastructure operating costs, AWS resources do not incur costs, there are no software licensing costs. The AWS cloud pricing model differs from the traditional on-premise storage pricing model in several ways. One of the primary differences is that there are no upfront cost commitments with AWS. With on-premise storage, a business would typically have to purchase and maintain their own physical storage devices, which can require a significant upfront investment. Now, here we are basically talking about CapEx and OpEx, which is capital expenditure or operational expenditure. When you move from on-premise to cloud, then you basically make a move from capital expenditure to operational expenditure. If you don't know about capital expenditure and operational expenditure, I already have a series which is more focused on Azure, but I have a video in that series which is explaining the differences between CapEx and OpEx. So I would recommend you to go through that video, which I'll be linking to this one as well. Let's move to next question. A company is developing a mobile app that needs a high performance NoSQL database. Which AWS service should the company use for this database? Your options are, and you need to choose the two options. Now the options are Amazon RDS, Amazon Aurora, Amazon Document DB with MongoDB compatibility, Amazon Redshift, Amazon DynamoDB. You would have already understood that the main keyword in this question is you need to look for a NoSQL database. And the options available, the two NoSQL databases are DocumentDB and DynamoDB, making option C and option E as the correct choice. Question number 41 of the series. Which AWS service or tool should a company use to centrally request and track service limit increases? Your options are AWS Service Catalog, AWS Budgets, AWS Config, Service Quotas. The correct answer is service quota. It is a AWS service that helps you manage your quotas for many AWS services from one location. Along with looking up the quota values, you can also request a quota increase from the service quota console. It was formerly referred to as limits. You can see the link on my screen, which you can refer to read more about service quotas. A company wants to launch its workload on AWS and requires the system to automatically recover from failure. Which pillar of the AWS well-architected framework includes this requirement? Your options are operational excellence, performance efficiency, reliability, cost optimization. So basically here we are looking for the pillar which is inclined towards automatic recovery from failure. And this is one of the design principles of reliability pillar. Now there are different pillars in the well-architected tool of AWS. So I strongly suggest you to go through the link which are there on your screen now to understand this in more detail, as there will be different questions from this in your exam. Question number 143. Which of the following AWS service uses edge locations? Your options are AWS Global Accelerator, Amazon Connect, Amazon Aurora, AWS Outposts. The correct answer is option A, AWS Global Accelerator. Next question. A company has a single Amazon EC2 instance. The company wants to adopt a highly available architecture. What can the company do to meet this requirement? Your options are change the EC2 instance family to a compute optimized instance, scale vertically to a larger EC2 instance size, scale horizontally across multiple availability zones, purchase an EC2 dedicated instance. Now here they are looking for high availability. So let's first see what happens when you go with option A. Now, option A is to change the EC2 instance to a compute optimized instance. With this, you'll get more compute power, but you won't get high availability. So the option is incorrect. Option B talks about scaling vertically to a larger size, which will give you more CPU and RAM, but again, no high availability. So an incorrect choice. Now, option C, which talks about scaling horizontally in multiple AZ, means you are adding more VMs in a different availability zone, which will give you high availability. As if one VM goes down, then you have a different one, making option C as the correct choice. But before proceeding forward, let's look at option D as well, why the option D is not correct. Now, purchasing an EC2 dedicated instance doesn't provide you high availability because you just have a dedicated instance, but the instance is still one. So if the instance goes down, you don't have anything as a backup, which means option D is again incorrect. Let's move at question 145 of the series. A company is preparing to launch a new web store that is expected to receive high traffic for an upcoming event. The web store runs only on AWS, and the company has an AWS Enterprise Support Plan. Which AWS resource will provide guidance about how the company should scale its architecture and operational support during the event? Your options are the designated AWS Technical Account Manager, also called as TAM, AWS Abuse Team, AWS Professional Services, AWS Infrastructure Event Management. The correct answer here is option D, AWS Infrastructure Event Management, also called as IEM. They offer architectural and scaling guidance and operational support during the preparation and execution of planned events such as shopping holidays, product launches, and migrations. For these events, AWS Infrastructure Event Management will help you assess operational readiness, identify and mitigate risks, and execute your event confidently with AWS experts by your side. The program is included in the enterprise support plan and is available to business support customers for an additional fee. So you pay for the service. Question number 146 of the series. A company wants to limit its employee AWS access to a portfolio of predefined AWS resources. Which AWS solution should the company use to meet this requirement? Your options are AWS Software Development Kit, AWS Service Catalog, AWS App Sync, AWS Config. The correct answer here is AWS Service Catalog. Service Catalog allows you to create, organize, and govern a curated catalog of AWS resources that can be shared at the permission level. So you can quickly provision approved cloud resources without needing direct access to the underlying AWS services. Next question. Which of the following AWS services lets connect devices easily and securely interact with cloud applications and other devices? Your options are AWS IoT Core, Amazon SNS, AWS Directory Service, Amazon Cognito. These type of questions are literally the easiest questions that you can get in exam, as they have just mentioned definition of a service as the question. And the correct answer in this case is AWS IoT Core, which lets connected devices easily and securely interact with cloud applications and other devices. Next question. A developer wants to use an Amazon S3 bucket to store application logs that contain sensitive data. Which AWS service or feature should the developer use to restrict read and write access to the S3 bucket? So someone wants to store sensitive data in a S3 bucket, and they want to secure read and write access to the S3 bucket. Which feature should they use to implement this kind of access? Your options are security groups, Amazon CloudWatch, ACLs, and AWS CloudTrails. So the correct answer in this case is ACLs. ACL, also the full form is access control list, are one of the resource-based options that you can use to manage access to your buckets and objects. You can use ACLs to grant basic read and write permissions to other AWS accounts. I would highly suggest you to go through the link on your screen to understand how ACLs work, as you might want to use this in your implementations as well. Moving on to next question. A retail company is building a new mobile app. The company is evaluating whether to build the app at an on-premise data center or in AWS cloud. Which of the following are benefits of building this app in the AWS cloud? You need to choose two options here. So your options are complete control over the physical security of the infrastructure, flexibility to scale up in minutes as the application becomes popular, ability to pick the specific data centers that will host the application servers, increased speed for trying out new projects, a large upfront capital expense, and low variable expenses. So you need to choose the benefits of building the app in the AWS cloud. No matter what is mentioned before this line in the question, in this question, what you need to do is you need to choose two benefits of building the app in AWS cloud. Let's start with option A. Option A talks about complete control over the physical security of the infrastructure. Whenever you are dealing with cloud, you don't really have access to the physical infrastructure. So this cannot be the right option. Let's look at option 2. Flexibility to scale up in minutes as the application becomes popular. Yes, this seems the right option, because with any cloud vendor, you can practically scale as much as you want in minutes, because the vendor has already catered for growing demand of clients. So this seems to be the right option. Let's look at option C. Ability to pick the specific data center that will host the application servers. It doesn't seem to be the right option because you don't have the ability to choose the specific data centers. You have the ability to choose the availability zone or the region, but you don't have an option to choose a specific data center. Let's look at option D. Increase speed for trying out new project. Yes, this seems to be the right option because you have whole services at your disposal and you can spin up the infrastructure in just few clicks. So you get increased speed for trying out new projects. Suppose you want to use serverless computing. You have everything at your disposal and you just need to create the Lambda functions in just few clicks. Now we already have the two right options, which are option B and option D, but let's look at option E, why this is not correct. A large upfront capital expense and low variable expense. This is the classic definition of capital expenditure. But here in cloud, remember my statement, we make a move from capital expenditure to operational expenditure. So this is not the correct option. Let's look at the next question of the series. A company uses Amazon Workspaces. According to the AWS shared responsibility model, which task is the responsibility of AWS? Your options are provide security for workspaces user accounts through AWS Identity and Access Management, IAM. Configure AWS CloudTrail to log API calls and user activity. Set up multi-factor authentication for each workspace user account. Ensure the environmental safety and security of the AWS infrastructure that hosts workspaces. Whenever you have questions related to shared responsibility model, think whether you as a customer have access to perform the activity being talked about in the question. If you have access, then most likely that will fall under your responsibility. And if you don't have access, then it will be most likely AWS responsibility. Now, in this case, option D, where there is a talk about security of the AWS infrastructure, seems the correct answer, as customers don't have access to AWS infrastructure. Remember, when I say you have access, you don't really need to look for your access because you might not be a global admin who has whole level of access. So you need to think from a customer perspective as a customer, whether you have access to do those sort of things or not. Now let's look at other three options as well. Provide security for workspaces user account through AWS IAM. So you do have access to play around with IAM. That means you should be able to do it, which means it is your responsibility. Configure AWS CloudTrail to log API calls and user requests. Again, you have access to configure CloudTrail events, so this is your responsibility. And the third option, set up MFA for each workspace. Yes, customers do have access to set up MFA. Again, this lies under your responsibility. A company wants to build a serverless application that executes code in response to events such as changes to Amazon S3 buckets or updates to DynamoDB tables. They require a service that can automatically scale and handle the event-driven execution. Which AWS service should they use? Your options are Amazon Event Bridge, AWS Step Functions, AWS Lambda, Amazon SNS. This is one of the questions where question itself is the definition of the service, and correct answer in this case is AWS Lambda, which is a serverless compute service that allows you to run code without provisioning or managing servers. It can be triggered by events such as changes to Amazon S3 buckets or updates to DynamoDB tables. Lambda automatically scales and executes code in response to events, which is one of the requirements in this case. Question number 152 of the series. Which of the following is the responsibility of client under the AWS shared responsibility model? You need to choose two options. Your options are decommission physical storage devices, control physical access to data centers, patch management of an Amazon EC2 instance operating system, security group and ACL configuration, patch management of an Amazon RDS instance operating system. Now, folks, whenever you have questions on shared responsibility model, then you just need to think whether do you have access to perform the activity that is being talked about in this question. If you think you have access to perform the activity, then most likely you would be the one who is responsible to do that. And if you don't have access, then it would be most likely AWS responsibility. So let's look at first option here. Decommission physical storage devices. You don't have access to physical infrastructure in any cloud computing vendor. So this is not your responsibility. This is AWS responsibility. Now, second option is control physical access to data centers. You don't even know where the data centers are hosted. You might know which region the data centers are in, but you would not know the exact location. So how would you control physical access to data centers? So again, this is not client's responsibility. The third option is patch management of an Amazon EC2 instance operating system. Now, Amazon EC2 is an infrastructure as a service where you have access to operating system. You are the one who is going to manage it. So it lies under your responsibility. Then the next option is security group and ACL configuration. Again, you do have access to create security groups and ACLs when you are creating EC2 instances. So this is something which is under your responsibility. And the last option, patch management of an Amazon RDS instance operating system. Now, Amazon RDS is a managed service. Whenever you are dealing with managed service, you don't have access to underlying infrastructure. So this is not your responsibility, and it is going to fall under AWS responsibility. Let's look at next question of the series. A company wants to migrate its on-premise web application to AWS. The application consists of multiple components, including a web server, application server, and database server. The company wants to ensure high availability and scalability for the application. Which AWS services should they use? Now, you are given a combination of different services and different options, and you need to tell which AWS services should the company use, and the requirements are given there. Whenever you have such questions, then most likely the answer would be a managed service, because they are looking for high availability and scalability. And the correct answer in this case would be option D. Amazon ECS, or also called as Elastic Container Service, can be used to deploy and manage the web servers, application servers, and database servers component as containers. Now, the next service, Amazon Aurora, can be used as a managed database service for high availability and scalability. And the third option, which is part of option D, is AWS auto scaling, which can be utilized to automatically scale the application based on predefined conditions, making option D as a correct choice in this case. Next question. How should you grant an Amazon EC2 instance access to an Amazon S3 bucket in accordance with security best practices? Your options are: modify the S3 bucket policy so any service can upload to it at any time. Have the EC2 instance assume a role to obtain the privileges to upload the file to S3 bucket. Hardcode an IAM user secret key and access key directly in the application and upload the file to S3 bucket. Store the IAM user secret and access key in a text file on the EC2 instance. Read the keys and then upload the file. Now, the best practice for granting an Amazon EC2 instance access to an Amazon S3 bucket is to have the EC instance assume a role to obtain the necessary privileges. This approach provides a more secure and scalable solution compared to the other options which are mentioned in this question. Now let's look at why other options are not right. Option A, which is to modify the S3 bucket policy to allow any service to upload to it at any time, is not recommended because it grants overly broad access, potentially exposing the bucket to unauthorized access and misuse. Option C, hard coding an IAM user secret key and access key directly in the application is again highly discouraged. Hard coded credentials pose a significant security risk as they can be easily compromised if an attacker gains access to the application's code or environment. Option D, storing the IAM's user's access and secret key in a text file on the EC2 instance is also not recommended, because storing credentials in plain text increases the risk of unauthorized access and compromises the security of the account. So now you would have more idea around why option B has been chosen. Let's look at next question. A company wants to deploy a serverless application that requires long-running workflows and coordination between multiple microservices. They want to utilize and monitor the execution flow of their application. Which AWS service should they use? Your options are AWS Step Functions, AWS Batch, AWS Glue, Amazon SWF. There are many keywords in this question, such as serverless, long-running workflows, coordination between microservices, and these all are related to only one option, that is AWS Step Functions, which is a fully managed service that allows company to coordinate and visualize workflows for their serverless applications. It provides a graphical console to design, run, and monitor workflows. Step Functions is suitable for making and managing long-running workflows and coordinating microservices. Let's look at question 156. Which AWS service provides a quick and automated way to create and manage AWS accounts? Your options are AWS QuickSight, AWS Organizations, Amazon Lightsail, Amazon Connect. And the correct answer in this case is option B, AWS Organizations, which lets you create new accounts at no additional charge. With accounts in an organization, you can easily allocate resources, group accounts, and apply governance policies to accounts or groups. Some of the use cases are automate AWS account creation, which is what is being asked in this question. Then some of the other use cases are enable proactive protection with a dedicated security group. It also ensures user access to designated resources, and it also enables you to share common resources across accounts. Now, there have been many questions around different use cases of AWS organization throughout the series. So there can be many variations to this question. The different questions that you would have seen might seem same, but obviously there are different use cases that are being talked about in different options. So read the question carefully and see which use case is being talked about, because there can be different use cases of different AWS services. A company wants to migrate their existing relational database to AWS. They require a fully managed database service that offers high performance, scalability, and automated backups. Which AWS service should they use? Your options are Amazon RDS, Amazon DynamoDB, Amazon Elastic Cache, Amazon Redshift. And the correct answer here is option A, Amazon RDS, which is a fully managed relational database service that allows companies to migrate their existing databases to AWS. It offers high performance, scalability, and automated backups, making it suitable for migrating relational databases. Amazon Elastic Cache is an in-memory caching service, and Redshift is a fully managed data warehousing service here. So they are obviously not the correct choice in this case. Question number 158 of the series. Which scenarios should a user report to the AWS abuse team? You need to choose two options. Your options are SQL injection attack being made from an IP address that doesn't belong to AWS, a DDoS attack being made on an AWS resource, patch management of an Amazon EC2 instance operating system, A company's resources are being used in a way that is inconsistent with the corporate policy. AWS resources are being used to host objectionable or illegal content. A company is receiving HTTPS requests on a web server that is serving HTTP traffic. Now, the correct answers here are option B and option E. A DDoS attack being made on an AWS resource, and AWS resources are being used to host objectionable or illegal content. The AWS abuse team can assist you when AWS resources are implicated in multiple abuse types. Now, the first one is web content or non-copyright intellectual property, that's objectionable content hosted on an AWS resource, which is what is option E in this case. Then they can help you with network activity that's originating from an AWS resource that causes problematic network traffic. And this can be an intrusion attempt, denial of service attack, port scanning, or any other abusive network activity, which is what is being talked about in option B, hence making option B and option E as the correct choice here. Now, there are more scenarios where AWS abuse team will be able to help you, and they include email abuse. Email abuse is basically an abusive email is sent from an AWS resource, or a spam content hosted on or sent from an AWS resource. They'll also help you with copyright issues that subject to content removal requests regarding the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Question number 159. A business needs to ensure that users of the AWS Management Console adhere to password complexity requirements or guidelines. How can the business customize the password complexity? Your options are: use an AWS Organization Service Control Policy or SCP, use an AWS IAM account password policy, use an AWS IAM user policy, use an AWS Security Hub Managed Insight. To customize password complexity for users of the AWS Management Console, the business can utilize an AWS IAM account password policy. The account password policy can include various requirements, such as they might specify a minimum number of characters that password must contain, or they could enforce that a special character type, such as uppercase letters, lowercase letters, or special characters, so that password becomes more complex. They could also enforce a maximum password age after which users will be prompted to change their password, or they could even prohibit users from reusing their previous passwords to ensure better security. And you could also set the number of failed logon attempts before an account is logged, and you could also set the duration of the lockout period. So these are all standard requirements that you might have seen in your corporate accounts, where you have to change passwords after a certain amount of time, and there are some complexities like case sensitive things, and you can't use your previous 3 passwords and so on. So this is what you can achieve in AWS as well using IAM account password policy. Next question. An organization wants to remove the necessity for pre-deployment estimation of infrastructure capacity. Additionally, the organization wants to spend money on cloud resources only when the resources are needed. Which AWS cloud feature best meets the organization's needs? Your options are reliability, global reach, pay-as-you-go pricing, economies of scale. Now, the cloud feature that best meets the organization need of removing the necessity for pre-deployment estimation of infrastructure capacity and spending money on cloud resources only when is needed is pay-as-you-go pricing. Now, with pay-as-you-go pricing, the organization can dynamically scale its infrastructure up or down based on demand without the need for upfront estimation. It allows the organization to spend money on cloud resources only when they are utilized. So basically, they are charged for the actual usage duration and resource consumption, which is what is pay-as-you-go pricing. Question number 161. How does consolidated billing help reduce costs for a company that has multiple AWS accounts? It aggregates usage across accounts so that the company can reach volume discount thresholds sooner. It gives AWS resellers the ability to bill their customers for usage. It provides a simplified billing invoice that the company can process more quickly than a standard invoice. It offers an additional 10% discount on purchases of all upfront reserved instances. Consolidated billing in AWS allows a company with multiple AWS accounts to combine the billing and payment of all those accounts into a single consolidated invoice. This has many advantages, including the ability to reduce cost through volume discounts. So the correct answer here is option A. It aggregates usage across accounts so that the company can reach volume discount thresholds sooner. Next question. Which disaster recovery option is the least expensive? Your options are backup and restore, multi-site, warm standby, pilot light. The least expensive disaster recovery option is backup and restore. It is the basic disaster recovery approach where regular backups of data and system are taken and stored securely. In the event of disaster, the data and systems can be restored from these backups. This method typically incurs low cost compared to other options as it does not involve maintaining additional infrastructure or resources in standby mode. But remember, when you are using backup and restore options, it comes with its own drawbacks as well, where RPO and RTO are high compared to the other options. So you need to weigh in the pros and cons when you are choosing the disaster recovery strategy for your business. But obviously, that is out of the scope for this question. In this question, the least expensive option is being asked, which is backup and restore. Question number 163. Which AWS support plan provides a full set of AWS Trusted Advisor checks? Your options are basic and developer support, business and basic support, business and enterprise support, developer and enterprise support. And the correct answer here is option C, business support and enterprise support. Now, with AWS basic support and AWS developer support, customers can access core security checks and checks for service quotas. But with AWS business and enterprise supports, customers can access all checks, including cost optimization, security, fault tolerance, performance, and service quotas as well. Next question. A company has infrastructure in one AWS region and is expanding operations to a second AWS region. The company is using the same AWS CloudFormation template in the second region that the company uses in the original region. The company attempts to launch Amazon EC2 on-demand instance in the second region and receives error messages. What could cause these error messages? The company cannot operate in a second region until it updates its AWS contracts. The company has not configured AWS budgets to monitor the budget for the EC2 instances. The requested EC2 instance types are not available in the second region. A new EC2 key pair has not been created for the EC2 instances. The correct answer here is option D. A new EC2 key pair has not been created for the EC2 instances. If you are using an existing key pair from the original region, it might not work in the second region because key pairs are specific to each region. You should create a new key pair for the second region and specify it in your CloudFormation template. Question number 165. A company is planning to migrate its on-premise infrastructure to AWS. They have a large number of virtual machines running different operating systems and applications. The company wants to simplify the migration process and minimize the impact on their existing systems. Which AWS service should they use? Your options are AWS Application Migration Service, AWS Snowball, AWS Data Sync, AWS Application Discovery Service. And the correct answer here is option A, AWS Application Migration Service, which is a highly automated lift and shift solution that simplifies expedites and reduce the cost of migrating applications to AWS. It also allows companies to lift and shift a large number of physical, virtual, or cloud servers without compatibility issues, performance disruptions, or long cutover windows, which is what is one of the requirement in this question. How does AWS charge for AWS Lambda usage once the free tier has been exceeded? You need to choose two options. By the number of versions of a specified Lambda function, by the time it takes for the Lambda function to execute, by the programming language that is used for the Lambda function, by the number of requests made for a given Lambda function, by the total number of Lambda functions in an AWS account. And the correct answers here are option B and option D. AWS bills based on the total compute time consumed by the Lambda function, which is measured in milliseconds. Now, the time is calculated from the moment the function starts executing to the moment it completes, which is why option B is correct. And AWS charges per request for the number of times a Lambda function is invoked. Each time the function is triggered, whether by an API call, event source, or any other means, it counts as a request. Hence, option D is also correct here. Next question. A user needs an automated security assessment report that will identify unintended network access to Amazon EC2 instances and vulnerabilities on those instances. Which AWS service will provide this assessment report? Your options are Amazon Inspector, EC2 Security Groups, AWS Config, Amazon Macie. And the correct answer here is option A, Amazon Inspector. Question number 168 of the series. AWS CloudFormation is designed to help the user with which of the following activities? Your options are set up data lakes, model and provision resources, update application code, create reports for billing. And the correct answer here would be option B, model and provision resources. Question number 169. Your organization needs to store large amounts of unstructured data in the cloud. Which AWS service is best suited for this purpose? Your options are Amazon S3, Amazon DynamoDB, AWS Snowball, AWS Storage Gateway. For storing large amount of unstructured data in the cloud, the best suited AWS service is Amazon S3, also called a simple storage service. I highly recommend you to go through my detailed video on Amazon S3, as you can expect to see multiple storage related questions in the exam. Let's look at question number 170 of the series. Your organization wants to grant temporary limited access to AWS resources for external partners without creating AWS IAM users. Which AWS service can help you achieve this? You need to select two options here. Now, the condition is the organization wants to grant temporary limited access to AWS resources for external partners, and they don't want to create the IAM users for those users. Your options here are AWS SSO, Amazon Cognito, AWS Directory Service, AWS IAM roles, AWS organizations. The two AWS services that can help you achieve this requirement basically to grant temporary limited access is Amazon Cognito and AWS IAM roles. With Amazon Cognito, you can authenticate external partners and provide them with temporary limited access to specific AWS resources. It supports temporary security credentials to grant access to AWS services without the need for a long-term IAM user account, which is what is being asked in this question. Now, for the second one, when external partners need access to AWS resources, you can assume an IAM role temporarily, which grants them the necessary permissions. These temporary credentials provided by IAM roles have an expiration time, ensuring limited access. Next question. A company has a AWS managed IAM policy that does not grant the necessary permissions for users to accomplish required tasks. How can this be resolved? Your options are: use a third-party web application firewall managed rule from the AWS Marketplace, enable AWS Shield Advanced, use AWS Key Management Service KMS to create a customer managed key, create a custom IAM policy. And the correct answer here is create a custom IAM policy. Creating a custom IAM policy allows you to define and fine tune the specific permission required for individual users, groups, or roles in your AWS account. By creating this, you can grant the precise permission needed to perform the required tasks without providing unnecessary access, which also follows the AWS principle of least privilege. Question number 172 of the series. Which AWS service is designed to help users who want to use machine learning for natural language processing (NLP) but do not have experience in machine learning? AWS Recognition, AWS Deep Learning AMIs, Amazon Comprehend, Amazon SageMaker. And the correct answer here is Amazon Comprehend, which is an AWS service designed to help users who want to use machine learning for natural language processing but do not have experience in machine learning. So basically, you can notice the question here is just the definition of Amazon Comprehend service. So you can expect to see some questions in the exam where they have just mentioned the definition of a AWS service in the question, and then in the answer options you have multiple options which are different AWS services. So it is very important that you know which AWS service corresponds to which functionality, because these questions are the easiest ones. Okay. So Amazon Comprehend basically uses pre-trained machine learning models to analyze and extract insights from unstructured text data such as sentiment analysis, entity recognition, language detection, key phrase extraction, and topic modeling. Question number 173 of the series. A running Amazon EC2 instance will be interrupted if capacity becomes temporarily unavailable. In which of the following pricing models? Your options are on-demand instances, spot instances, standard reserved instances, convertible reserved instances. In the spot instance pricing model, you can bid for unused EC2 instance capacity in the AWS cloud. The price of a spot instance fluctuates based on supply and demand for instance capacity. If your bid price exceeds the current spot price, your instance will be launched and run as long as the spot price remains below your bid price. However, because spot instances are based on unused capacity, there might be situations where the capacity becomes temporarily unavailable due to increased demand from other users or the need for AWS to reclaim the capacity. In such cases, AWS may terminate spot instances with a 2-minute warning, allowing you to gracefully handle the interruption and save your work. So it is always recommended that if you want to use spot instances for cost saving, then you do not put the workloads that cannot handle interruption on those instances. If you have such workloads which can handle interruptions and you are looking for cost saving, then spot instances are best for you. But if your application cannot handle interruptions, then spot instance is not something which is recommended for your use. Next question. You are the security officer in your organization and want a list of any potential vulnerabilities in Amazon EC2 security groups. Which AWS service should you use? Your options are AWS Trusted Advisor, Amazon Guard Duty, AWS CloudTrail, AWS Artifact. And the correct answer here is AWS Trusted Advisor. Now, there is a link on your screen at the moment, which will be available in the description section of this video. Go through the link to understand more about how AWS Trusted Advisor can help you in determining any potential vulnerabilities in Amazon EC2 security groups. Question number 175 of the series. If a user has an AWS account with an enterprise level AWS support plan, who is the primary point of contact for billing or account inquiries? Your options are AWS Concierge Support Team, AWS Marketplace Seller, AWS Partner Network Partner, Solutions Architect. AWS Concierge Support Team provides personalized white glove support for enterprise level AWS support customers. They serve as the primary contact for any billing account or general inquiries related to the AWS account. Next question. Which of the following are categories of recommendations provided by AWS Trusted Advisor? You need to choose three options here. Now your options are cost optimization, high availability, fault tolerance, least privilege access, and performance. And the correct answers are now on your screen, which are cost optimization, fault tolerance, and performance. Again, I have a link on my screen, which you can use to read about different type of recommendations that are made by AWS Trusted Advisor. Now, for the sake of this video, apart from these three, it also provides recommendations related to fault tolerance and service quotas. So total, it provides recommendations for 5 categories: cost optimization, fault tolerance, performance, service quotas. Let's look at question number 177. Which of the following AWS service would enable you to share reserved instances across multiple accounts that your company manages? Your options are AWS CloudFormation, AWS Organizations, Amazon CloudWatch, AWS Direct Connect. And the correct answer here is AWS Organization, which is a service that helps you centrally manage and govern multiple AWS accounts within your organization. It allows you to create groups of accounts and apply policy to these groups. One of the features provided by AWS organizations is the ability to share reserved instances between member accounts in an organization. Question number 178. Which service provides a highly available and elastic NFS file system for both cloud-based and on-premise servers? Your options are Amazon S3, Amazon S3 Glacier, Amazon Elastic File System, also called as EFS, Amazon Elastic Block Store, also called as EBS. EFS is designed to provide a simple and scalable file storage solution for cloud-based and on-premise servers. EFS supports the NFS protocol, which is Network File System Protocol, making it compatible with a wide range of operating system and applications. Next question. Your company is moving their data storage from on-premise to cloud. You are tasked with evaluating different approaches for data warehousing. Which AWS service should you use that provides a managed data warehousing solution and supports columnar storage up to a petabyte scale? Your options are Amazon DynamoDB, Amazon Redshift, AWS Database Migration Service, Amazon Aurora. Now in the question, you can see there is a talk about moving the data storage from on-premise to cloud. However, the gist of the question is to talk about a service which is providing you the capability of data warehousing and also supports columnar storage. So there are some distractors in the question. That's why it's very important you drill down to what is the gist of the question and then try to look for the answers. Now, the AWS service that provides a managed data warehousing solution and supports columnar storage is Amazon Redshift. Let's look at why others are not correct. DynamoDB is a managed NoSQL database service that is ideal for applications requiring high performance, low latency access to data at any scale. Therefore, it is not the correct answer as it is not a data warehousing solution. AWS Database Migration Service is a service that helps migrate databases to AWS. But again, it is not a data warehousing solution. That's why I told you to look at the gist of the question. Now, if you look at the first statement where it says your company is moving their data storage from on-premise to cloud, you might be tempted to the option AWS Database Migration Service, but that's not correct here. Amazon Aurora is a relational database engine that is fully compatible with MySQL and PostgreSQL. While that is an excellent choice for transactional workloads, it is not designed for data warehousing solution, which leaves us with only one option, which is option B, Amazon Redshift, which is the correct answer. Next question. Which element of the AWS global infrastructure enables caching of assets in a global content delivery network to reduce latency for end users? Your options are region, local zone, availability zone, edge location. And the correct answer here is edge location. Edge locations are part of the AWS content delivery network and are distributed data centers located in different geographic locations across the world. These edge locations serve as caching endpoints and are responsible for delivering content, including static files, videos, images, and other assets to users with low latency and high data transfer speeds. When a user requests the content is cached at the nearest edge location, reducing the round trip time and improving the overall performance for end users in that region. How can a user safeguard against AWS service outages in the event of a widespread natural disaster? Your options are store application artifacts using AWS Artifact and replicate them across multiple AWS regions, deploy applications across multiple AWS regions, use a hybrid cloud computing deployment model within the geographic region, deploy applications across multiple availability zones within an AWS region. To safeguard against AWS service outages in the event of a widespread natural disaster, deploying application across multiple regions is a recommended strategy. This approach helps distribute the workload and resources across different geographical locations, reducing the impact of a potential service disruption caused by a natural disaster. Next question. Who is responsible for configuration management under the AWS shared responsibility model? Your options are: it is solely the responsibility of AWS, it is solely the responsibility of the customer, it is shared between AWS and the customer, it is not part of AWS shared responsibility model. Configuration management under the AWS shared responsibility model is shared between AWS and the customer. AWS maintains the configuration of its infrastructure resources, whereas customer is responsible for managing their own guest operating systems, databases, applications, and so on. Question number 183 of the series. You are designing a global application that requires low latency search capabilities. How can you achieve this using Amazon Cloud Search? Your options are: deploy Amazon Cloud Search in a single region closest to the majority of users, deploy Amazon Cloud Search in multiple regions and use Amazon Route 53 latency-based routing, use Amazon CloudFront to cache search results from a single search domain, deploy Amazon Cloud Search with a cross-region replication setup. To achieve low latency search capabilities for a global application, you should deploy Amazon Cloud Search in multiple AWS regions. Strategically placing instances of your search domain in regions that are geographically closer to your users. By doing this, you can distribute the search load and reduce latency for users accessing the search functionality. Using Amazon Route 53 with latency-based routing allows you to direct user requests to the cloud search instance in the region that provides the lowest latency for each user's location. This ensures that users are automatically routed to the nearest available cloud search instance, optimizing response times and providing a better user experience. The combination of this option, which is option B, is the correct answer. Question number 184 of the series. Which of the following are best practices when using AWS organizations? You need to choose two options. Your options are: do not use tags for billing, do not use AWS organizations to automate AWS account creation, create accounts per department, disable CloudTrail on multiple accounts, restrict account privileges using service control policies. Two of the best practices when using AWS organizations are to create accounts per department and restrict account privileges using service control policies. Creating account per department allows you to organize your AWS resources based on your organizational structure and manage them more effectively. It provides a clear separation of resources and responsibilities, which can help with cost management and resource allocation. On the other hand, service control policies allow you to set fine-grained permissions at the organization level, controlling what actions can be performed in member accounts. This helps enforce security and compliance policies across your organization. Next question. Which of the following AWS service enables conventional SQL queries against stored datasets directly from Amazon S3? Your options are AWS Glue, AWS Code Commit, Amazon Cloud Search, Amazon Athena. Amazon Athena enables conventional SQL queries against stored datasets directly from Amazon S3. It allows you to analyze data stored in Amazon S3 using standard SQL queries without the need to set up and manage complex data warehouses or infrastructure. This makes it a powerful tool for querying and analyzing large data sets stored in S3. Next question. Your application experiences sudden spikes in traffic at unpredictable intervals. You want to ensure that your application can handle these spikes automatically without manual intervention. Which feature of Amazon EC2 autoscaling can help achieve this? Your options are scheduled scaling, predictive scaling, dynamic scaling, and elastic scaling. Amazon EC2's auto-scaling dynamic scaling feature allows your application to automatically handle sudden spikes in traffic by automatically adjusting the number of instances running based on the defined scaling policies. This helps ensure that application can scale up or down as needed to maintain performance and availability without requiring manual intervention. Question number 187 of the series. Which of the following services can be utilized to automate infrastructure? You need to choose two options. Your options are Amazon CloudFront, AWS CloudFormation, AWS Batch, Amazon QuickSight, AWS OpsWorks. The services that can be utilized to automate infrastructure from the options provided here are AWS CloudFormation and AWS OpsWorks. AWS CloudFormation allows you to define and provision your AWS infrastructure as code using templates. It enables you to automate the creation, modification, and deletion of resources in a consistent and repeatable manner. AWS OpsWorks is a configuration management service that enables you to automate the deployment and management of applications and infrastructure. It supports Chef and Puppet for defining and automating configurations. The other options, Amazon CloudFront, AWS Batch, and Amazon QuickSites, are not primarily used for infrastructure automation. Amazon CloudFront is a content delivery network service. AWS Batch is a service for running batch computing workloads, and Amazon QuickSight is a business intelligence and data visualization service. Let's look at next question. Which of the following guidelines constitutes a well-architectured design philosophy for cloud application development? Your options are: provision resources for peak capacity, keep static data closer to compute resources, use tightly coupled components, design for automated recovery from failure. The guideline that constitutes a well-architected design philosophy for cloud application deployment is design for automated recovery from failure. This guideline emphasizes building applications that can automatically detect and recover from failures without manual intervention. This promotes high availability and reliability in the cloud environment. Question number 189. Your organization is undergoing a comprehensive security audit, and you need to provide auditors with the evidence of the security controls implemented in your AWS environment. What type of documents can you access in AWS Artifact to fulfill this requirement? Your options are: performance metrics of your Amazon EC2 instances, service level agreement details for Amazon S3, compliance reports and artifacts, AWS identity and access management user passwords. AWS Artifact provides access to various compliance-related documents, reports, and artifacts that can help you demonstrate the security controls and compliance measures implemented in your AWS environment. This includes documents such as AWS Shared Responsibility Model, compliance reports such as SOC reports, certifications such as ISO or PCI DSS, and other relevant documentation that can be provided to auditors as evidence of the security controls in place. Next question. Your application is hosted on Amazon EC2 instances with auto-scaling configured. You want to ensure that when an instance fails, it is replaced quickly and the application's performance is maintained. Which setting should you configure to achieve this? Your options are: set a low minimum instance count and a high maximum instance count, set a low cooldown period and a high instance termination policy, set a low desired capacity and a high instance launch configuration, set a low health check grace period and a high desired capacity. To ensure that failed instances are replaced quickly and the application performance is maintained, you should configure a low health check grace period and a high desired capacity for your auto-scaling group. By setting a low health check grace period, you ensure that the new instance is quickly evaluated for health and can start serving traffic as soon as it is ready. The health check grace period is the time Amazon EC2 autoscaling waits before it starts checking the health status of a newly launched instance. The desired capacity setting in autoscaling specifies the desired number of instances running at any given time. By setting a high desired capacity, you ensure that the autoscaling group maintains a sufficient number of instances even in the event of failure, which helps maintain application performance. When an instance fails, the high desired capacity will prompt autoscaling to quickly launch replacement instances to maintain the desired capacity. So folks, if you are liking the content, then hit like and subscribe the channel. If you have any doubts till now, post them in the comment section and I'll answer them as soon as possible. Meanwhile, let's get to next question. How can AWS most effectively assist a startup in cutting down its computing costs? Your options are: by automating the provisioning of individual developer environments, by automating customer relationship management, by providing on-demand resources for peak usage, by implementing a fixed monthly computing budget. AWS offers services that allow startups to dynamically scale their computing resources or down based on actual demand. This elasticity helps optimize costs by avoiding over-provisioning and paying only for the resources used during peak times. With services like Amazon EC2 autoscaling and Amazon RDS autoscaling, startups can automatically adjust their resources capacity to meet traffic patterns. Question number 192 of the series. A workload hosted on AWS will continue to operate indefinitely by using a steady number of Amazon EC2 instances, which pricing strategy will decrease costs while assuring the availability of computational resources. Your options are reserved instances, dedicated hosts, on-demand instances, and spot instances. The pricing strategy that will decrease costs while assuring the availability of computational resources for a workload hosted on AWS is reserved instances. You might be tempted to spot instances here, as they are more cost effective than reserved instances, but are not suitable for workloads that require continuous availability, which is the key to answer this question, as they can be disrupted if the spot instances price exceeds your bid. Next question. Which type of VPN connection is recommended for connecting large-scale on-premise networks to multiple Amazon VPCs across different regions? Your options are remote VPN, client VPN, software VPN, hardware VPN. The type of VPN connection that is recommended for connecting large-scale on-premise networks to multiple Amazon VPCs across different regions is hardware VPN. A hardware VPN connection uses physical devices such as VPN appliances to establish a secure and dedicated connection between your on-premise network and Amazon VPCs. This type of connection is suitable for scenarios where you need to connect large-scale networks, provide high throughput, and establish connectivity across different regions. Hardware VPN connections can offer consistent performance and are often chosen for more demanding network requirements. Question number 194 of the series. What is the purpose of a compliance report in AWS Artifact? Your options are to generate custom audit reports based on user-defined criteria, to provide real-time security alerts for AWS resources, to track changes made to AWS services and resources, to document AWS compliance with industry standards. The correct answer here is to document AWS compliance with industry standards. Next question. Which metrics should you monitor closely to determine if Amazon EC2 autoscaling is effectively adjusting the number of instances in your autoscaling group? Your options are CPU utilization, disk space usage, network throughput, DNS queries per second. Monitoring CPU utilization is a crucial metric to determine if Amazon EC2 autoscaling is effectively adjusting the number of instances in your autoscaling group. CPU utilization reflects the workload and processing demand of your instances. When CPU utilization is high, it indicates that the instances are working at or near their capacity, which could lead to degraded performance or response times. In such cases, the autoscaling should trigger scaling actions to launch additional instances to handle the increased load. Similarly, when CPU utilization is low, autoscaling can reduce the number of instances to save resources. A company has performance and regulatory requirements that call for it to run its workload only in its on-premise data center. Which AWS service or resource should the company use? You need to choose two options, and your options are Amazon Pinpoint, Amazon Worklink, AWS Outposts, AWS AppSync, AWS Snowball Edge. Given the requirement to run the workloads only in the on-premise data center, the company should consider AWS Outposts and AWS Snowball Edge. AWS Outposts allow you to extend AWS infrastructure and services to your on-premise data center. This service enables you to run AWS services locally while still being able to connect to the broader AWS ecosystem. It is suitable for meeting regulatory requirements while maintaining the performance benefits of the cloud. AWS Snowball Edge is a data transfer and edge computing device that can be used in on-premise environments. While its primary purpose is data transfer, it can also perform edge computing tasks, making it a suitable choice for certain workloads that need to be executed on-premise. Question number 197 of the series. Which of the following is the best practice to consider while designing your service architecture? Your options are build a single application component that can handle all the application functionality, design tightly coupled components, avoid monolithic architecture by segmenting workloads, make large changes on fewer iterations to reduce chances of failure. The best practice to consider while designing your service architecture is to avoid monolithic architecture by segmenting workloads. Monolithic architecture refers to building an application as a single, tightly integrated unit. While this approach may seem simple at first, it often leads to scalability, maintainability, and agility issues as the application grows. Segmenting workloads involves breaking down your application into smaller, loosely coupled components or services. This microservice or service-oriented architecture approach allows for greater flexibility, scalability, and ease of maintenance. Each component can be developed, deployed, or scaled independently, which can result in improved fault tolerance and easier troubleshooting. Next question. How does the scale of cloud computing help you to save costs? Your options are you can quickly deploy application to customers and provide them with low latency. Accessing services on demand helps to prevent access or limited capacity. You don't have to invest in technology resources before using them. The aggregated cloud usage from a large number of customers results in lower pay-as-you-go pricing. Cloud computing allows you to provision and use computing resources such as virtual machines, storage, and database on an as-need basis. You only pay for the resources you use when you use them. This on-demand model contrasts with traditional on-premise data centers where you would typically have to purchase and maintain hardware in advance, often leading to either excess capacity, which is costly, or limited capacity, which can hinder business operations. So basically, how does the scale of cloud computing help you save cost? Accessing services on demand helps to prevent access or limited capacity. Next question. Which of the following AWS service can a business use to identify and reroute customers to other servers in the event of a web server outage? Your options are Amazon Route 53, Amazon CloudFront, Amazon GuardDuty, AWS Trusted Advisor. Correct answer here is Amazon Route 53. Amazon Route 53 DNS failover capabilities can help redirect traffic to alternative servers or resources, ensuring continuity of service in the event of a failure. Let's understand how does DNS failover work. If a health check determines that a resource is unhealthy, Route 53 automatically reroutes traffic to healthy resources, ensuring service continuity. Question number 200 of the series. A business wishes to improve its capacity for infrastructure recovery in the event of a natural catastrophe. This capability corresponds to which pillar of the AWS well-architected framework? Your options are security, reliability, performance efficiency, cost optimization. The capability to improve infrastructure recovery in the event of a natural catastrophe corresponds to the reliability pillar of the AWS well-architected framework. Reliability is all about ensuring that your system can recover from failures, including natural disasters. It encompasses strategies like redundancy, backup, and restore processes, disaster recovery plans, and high availability configurations to minimize downtime and data loss. In the event of the AWS well-architected framework, in the context of the AWS well-architected framework, improving infrastructure recovery to handle natural catastrophes is a key aspect of building reliable systems that can continue to operate even in adverse conditions.